Nove Miesto, autumn 1941. Since she had made a promise to her mother, Hana did her best to behave well. She helped her father when she could and did her lessons. Boschka, their much-loved housekeeper, tried to cook Hana's favorite meals and give her extra helpings of dessert. But Hana missed her mother terribly, especially at night. No one else could smooth her hair with quite the same touch. No one else could sing her lullaby. And that big, booming laugh of her mother's, everyone missed that. The children learned that their mother was in a place called Ravensbrück, a women's concentration camp in Germany. "Is it far away?" Hana asked her father. "When is she coming home?" George wanted to know. Father assured the children that he was doing everything he could to get her out. One afternoon, Hana was reading in her room when she heard Boschka calling for her. She decided to ignore her. Hana didn't feel like doing any chores. And what else was there to look forward to? But Boschka kept calling. "Hana? Hana? Where are you? Come quickly. There is something very special waiting for you at the post office." When she heard that, Hana dropped her book. Could it be what she hoped for most? She burst out of the house and ran down the street to the post office. Hana approached the wicket. "Do you have something for me?" she asked. The woman behind the counter slid a small brown package through the hole. Hana's heart leapt when she recognized her mother's writing. Her fingers trembled as she opened the package. Inside was a little brown heart. It was made of bread and had the initials HB carved into it. Attached was a letter. "My dearest one, I wish you all the best on your birthday. I am sorry that I can't help you blow out the candles this year. But the heart is a charm I made for your bracelet. Are your clothes getting too small for you? Ask Daddy and Georgie to speak to your aunts about having some new ones made for my big girl. I think about you and your brother all the time. I am well. Are you being a good girl? Will you write me a letter? I hope you and George are keeping up your studies. I am well. I miss you so much, dearest Hanichka. I am kissing you now. Love, Mother. May 1941. Ravensbrück." Hana closed her eyes and clutched the little brown bread heart. She tried to imagine that her mother was standing beside her. That fall brought another blow. One day, Father arrived home carrying 3 squares of cloth. On each was a yellow Star of David, and in the middle of the star, one word. Judah, Jew. "Come, children," said Father, as he took a pair of scissors from a kitchen drawer. "We need to cut out these stars and pin them on our coats. We must wear them whenever we leave the house." "Why?" asked Hana. "People already know we are Jews." "It's what we must do," replied Father. He looked so dejected, sad, and tired that Hana and George didn't argue. From that day on, Hana went outside less often. She would do almost anything to avoid wearing the yellow badge in public. She hated the star. It was so humiliating. It was so embarrassing. Wasn't it enough the children wondered that they'd lost their park, their pond, their school, and their friends? But now, when they left the house, the star was pinned to their clothing. One Jewish man in town was not willing to obey. He'd had enough of all the rules and restrictions, so on a late September day in 1941, he left his house feeling a little brazen. He did not cut out the star and pin the entire cloth to his coat. This tiny act of rebellion was immediately noticed by the Nazi officer in charge in Nove Miesto. He was furious. He declared that Nove Miesto must be made Judenfrei, free of Jews immediately. The very next morning, a big black car driven by a Nazi officer drew up in front of the Brady's house. 4 frightened Jewish men were already huddled inside it. There was a knock on the door. Father opened it. Hana and George hung behind him. The Gestapo officer yelled at Father to come out immediately. Hana and George couldn't believe their ears. They stood there, stunned, terrified and silent. Father hugged the children, implored them to be brave, and then he too was gone. Tokyo, spring 2000. Fumiko was enchanted by Hana's drawings. She knew they would help children better imagine what kind of person Hana had been. It would be easier for them to put themselves in her shoes. Fumiko was right. More than ever, the children who volunteered at the center focused their attention on Hana. Led by Maiko, some of them formed a group with a mission to let other kids know about what they were learning. They called their club Small Wings. Once a month, they met to plan their newsletter. Everyone had a role. The older kids wrote articles, the youngest were encouraged to draw pictures. Others wrote poems. With Fumiko's help, they sent their newsletter to schools far and wide, so others could find out about the history of the Holocaust and the search for Hana. More than anything, they wanted to know what Hana looked like. They wanted to see the face of this little girl whose story they yearned to know. Fumiko realized that if she could find a photograph of Hana, she would be even more alive to the children as a real human being. Fumiko was determined that the search would continue. Now that she had the drawings, a sock, the shoe, the sweater, and, of course, Hana's suitcase, Fumiko felt it was time to open the exhibit she had been working towards, the Holocaust seen through children's eyes.